Hi, very good morning. I'm Dr. Janak Patel, MD, General Physician. All my video lectures are mainly for educative purpose. This is one of the lecture in continuity with diabetes. So today we'll be talking on one of the not very uncommon complication in type 2 diabetes mellitus, and this is very commonly seen when the person is on insulin with SGLT2 inhibitors, SGLT2 receptor inhibitors. So you develop one not very uncommon, that is, we call it euglycemic diabetic ketoacidosis. So we'll be talking on that particular part. Now you know that any person who comes to you with nausea, vomiting, tachypnea, hyperapnea, or we call Kussmaul's breathing, and if he's a diabetic, particularly type 2 diabetes and in type 1 diabetes, very commonly, if you come across this, we always suspect first is diabetic ketoacidosis. But there is one condition where you come across SGLT2 inhibitor induced diabetic ketoacidosis, which is euglycemic. Blood sugar is invariably close to normal. We say less than 200. There is an increased chance of such type of diabetic ketoacidosis in SGLT2 inhibitor. Hence, it is also called SGLT2 inhibitor induced diabetic ketoacidosis, or we call euglycemic diabetic ketoacidosis. And there is two major difference. One is decreased urination as compared to classical diabetic ketoacidosis, and another is decreased thirst compared to diabetic ketoacidosis. These two finding very frequently will help you to differentiate in SGLT2 inhibitor induced diabetic ketoacidosis, or we call euglycemic decay. So today we'll be talking on that euglycemic decay, or short form we call EUDKA. So introduction, etiology, pathophysiology, clinical features, investigations, differential diagnosis, treatment and complications. Here I will start with one case, 29-year female with type 1 diabetes and bronchial asthma, who present in emergency room with nausea, vomiting, which started in the morning of presentation. She reported to have an elevated blood glucose level over last 24 hours despite of administering correction doses of insulin throughout her insulin pump. Suspecting her insulin pump was not functioning properly, she administered the correction dose of subcutaneous insulin via syringe based on her blood sugar level, which improved the glucose control. The next day morning, she felt poorly and started to experience nausea, vomiting, which prompted her to come to emergency room. She denies sick contact, fever, polydipsia and polyuria. She was diagnosed to have type 1 diabetes at the age of 6. There is no known microvascular complication from diabetes. So type 1 diabetes, asthma, anxiety, nothing in the past history, no tobacco, no socially alcohol, one glass of wine in the evening prior, no recreational or eliciting drugs, graduate students visiting NYC endocrinologist in out of state. Medication was insulin Lispro via continuous subcutaneous insulin infusion pump, and she was put on canagliflozin 100 mg daily and alprazolam 25 milligram was given, and she had allergic to NKDA. Temperature 90 normal, heart rate 120, blood pressure 114 by 54, respiratory rate 16, and pulse oximeter showed 98%. Height was 5.7, weight BMI is 24, 72.6, and on examination, dry mucous membrane, lung examination unremarkable, abdominal examination also unremarkable. WBC 12,100, hemoglobin 15.7, platelet 2,71,000, sodium 137, chloride, potassium 3.7, chloride was 100, CO2 12.2, blood urea 14, creatinine 0.777, glucose 191, anion gap was 25, because if you calculate the anion gap, that is sodium it's 130, oh yes, it will come to 25, yes, it will come to 137 minus 103, so it will come to that 125. Alright, sorry, 25 will be anion gap. So calcium 10.2, magnesium 2.1, phosphate 3.5, AST, ALT normal, alkaline phosphatase normal, venous blood glucose showed pH 7.21, others were normal. Urine analysis, ketone was more than 160, negative for infected side. So nitrate, that there is no infection. Urine HCG was less than 1.2, that is human choriogonadotrophic. So all this suggested that the person was in ketoacidosis. But as blood sugar, you can see here, it is normal, 191, with a high anion gap. It is always, we call euglycemic ketoacidosis. So diabetic service was consulted, presence of ketone in urine in absence of hyperglycemia. This is labeled as euglycemic diabetic ketoacidosis, where insulin pump is malfunctioning and person was already with insulin on canagliflozin, we call SGLT2 inhibitor. There is very high chance of person going into euglycemic decay. So euglycemic diabetic ketoacidosis is very common when canagliflozin, or we call SGLT2 inhibitor, is used along with insulin, and particularly when insulin dose is less than required, very common. So then person was started with insulin infusion, dextrose containing IV fluid to maintain the glucose level. Persistent anion gap metabolic acidosis necessitated increase in insulin infusion rate. Anion gap closed after approximately 18 hours. Then person was shifted to subcutaneous insulin regime and discharged home with discontinuation of canagliflozin. So you will have to discontinue SGLT2 inhibitor. So in general, diabetic ketoacidosis is a life-threatening emergency which is very common in type 1 diabetes, which is characterized by hyperglycemia, metabolic acidosis and ketonemia. But euglycemic decay is ketoacidosis, metabolic acidosis, but lower anticipated glucose, means glucose is always less than 200, and person is invariably on SGLT2 inhibitors. If you go for investigation, so euglycemic diabetic ketoacidosis definition wise, it is one of the few diabetic emergency diagnosed by specific triad, that is metabolic acidosis and ketonuria with ketonemia, but in absence of elevated sugar level. So presence of metabolic acidosis due to ketonemia, but the blood glucose level is less than 200, we always label that as euglycemic diabetic ketoacidosis. And you can measure these ketones by direct measurements of beta hydroxybutyrate. That is the best way of finding out ketones in blood. So normally in decay you will have polyuria, polydipsia, polyphagia, loss of weight, fatigue, nausea, vomiting, quite common. While in SGLT2 inhibitor induced diabetic ketoacidosis, euglycemia, person has lost lot of fluids because of SGLT2 inhibitor. So there is always a decreased urine output and decreased thirst as compared to decay. And this is very common because of off-label adjuvant treatment for type 1 diabetes by SGLT2 inhibitors. Yes, definitely SGLT2 inhibitors helps in lowering weight. So weight loss is there. It lowers the insulin doses. There is a cardiovascular benefit. And basically it is an oral hypoglycemic agent. This is the benefit. But if the insulin level reduces, the chances of euglycemic diabetic ketoacidosis will be higher in the person with SGLT2 inhibitor. So current state in type 1 diabetes treatment is insulin, which is FDA approved. You can use long acting insulin, short acting insulin, intermediate acting insulin, and even we call premilinitide, that is amylin analogs. Most common thing which is approved as far as FDA approved devices is concerned: insulin pens, syringes, glucometer, CGMS, insulin pumps, etc. And there are hybrid closed automated insulin delivery devices also available. Yes, there will be some drug which will be indicated in type 1 like sotagliflozin, which is in a trial, which is both SGLT1 plus SGLT2 combined inhibitor. So this in near future may be one of the drug of choice along with insulin in type 1 diabetes. Off-label adjunctive treatment in type 1, maybe you can use metformin. I'm not going into detail. So that can be one of the drug which can be tried, but yet it is FDA approved for type 2 diabetes only. It is not yet approved for type 1 diabetes mellitus. Another drug which is possibly some benefits is GLP-1 receptor agonist along with insulin in type 1 diabetes, maybe in near future. Now why a person develops diabetic ketoacidosis? Very common and particularly euglycemic. That is, if type 1 diabetes is on insulin plus he is on SGLT2 inhibitor. So this is most common. Another common factor is during pregnancy if he is on insulin plus SGLT2 inhibitor. And in type 2, insulin plus SGLT2 inhibitor can also induce euglycemic decay. GDM also is notorious. A person who is on alcohol and if he is on insulin plus SGLT2 inhibitor. Then person with glycogen storage disease, during fasting in Ramadan period, and in the person who has developed cirrhosis of liver and he is on SGLT2 plus insulin. And if the person who has got pancreatitis and secondary to pancreatitis, insulin level is low, chances of diabetic ketoacidosis will be higher, and if he is on SGLT2 inhibitor. So if any condition which reduces, even in a person with depression, starvation, etc. So if insulin supply is less, demand is more. Insulin supply will be less in all these conditions, while insulin demand will be more in some of these conditions. So insulin supply will be less if there is a classical is type 1 diabetes, particularly if the person who has developed a damage to pancreas, or chronic alcoholic, or person with acute MI. In all these conditions, the demand will become more. So insulin demand will be more in respiratory infections, urinary tract infections, skin infections, liver, pancreas, alcohol, intoxication or drugs like cocaine, acute MI, cerebrovascular stroke, glucocorticoids, and iatrogenic during surgery. All these conditions will demand increased insulin because of stress. And if the insulin dose is not adjusted, the chance of diabetic ketoacidosis will be higher. So DKA will be very common in the person whoever has got increased demand and the insulin dose what is being given is relatively less. So any condition which produces insulin deficiency, either because of missed dose or skipped doses, pancreatitis, heavy meal, the demand will become more, supply remains same. Or in pancreatitis, the production is less and demand is more. And because you have missed the insulin dose, you are not given adequate insulin. And this will be all precipitating factor, of which the most common is gastroenteritis, UTI and pneumonia comes topmost on the list, which will be responsible for 50% of diabetic ketoacidosis. And myocardial ischemia, stroke, pancreatitis. In pancreatitis, there will be decreased production. Myocardial ischemia and stroke, increased demand. Trauma, emotional, pregnancy, all this will be other additional precipitating factors. Cocaine use will be also one of the medication non-compliance, and first presentation of diabetes mellitus can occasionally present as DKA. So in all these conditions, you can develop diabetic ketoacidosis. And in this particular group of people, if person is along with SGLT2 receptor inhibitors, the chances of euglycemic will be more. So intoxication and inappropriate withdrawal of insulin will predispose to decay. And most common among all this is infection like pneumonia and UTI, missed insulin injection, or there is a defective pen device. And as far as cardiovascular complication is concerned, MI and stroke will be responsible. So euglycemic ketoacidosis is very common if the person is on SGLT2 receptor inhibitor. During pregnancy comes topmost on the list, and common precipitating factor will be if the patient is on insulin and SGLT2 receptor inhibitor, particularly if the patient is with type 1 diabetes mellitus, and if a person who is taking these two and concurrent illness or infection like UTI, respiratory tract infections, and recently the person has reduced the dose of insulin, or person who is alcoholic, or person intake of food is less, fluid intake is less, or suddenly he discontinue the insulin or he decreases the dose of insulin, inadequate insulin therapy, and quite common when insulin pen is not working and he is not aware of that insulin is not going into his body. All this condition will be responsible. Now we'll be just going through in short what is the mechanism in decay and what is the mechanism in euglycemic decay. So in a commonly in decay, lack of glucose leads to breakdown of fat, and fat is burned to produce ketones because it is initiated by lack of insulin. So in absence of insulin, fat will be metabolized by ketone pathway, and accumulation of ketone leads to acidosis. So let us see in short. So because of insulin deficiency in muscle, glycogenolysis, lactate production, proteolysis, amino acid production. Now glucose uptake is reduced by muscle as well as by adipose tissue. So in adipose tissue, lipolysis, fatty acid production, glycerol production, and in liver, ketogenesis, fatty acid, lactate, amino acid, and glycerol. All this will be converted into gluconeogenesis. Now this particular will try to elevate your sugar level. There will be also increase in the level of plasma urea, and there will be also ketone production by liver. So that will give rise to ketoacidosis, as well as kidney will try to throw it out because of increased plasma glucose level. Even kidney will try to throw out more water, and glycosuria, ketonuria, and high blood urea level will be also responsible for osmotic diuresis, and because of that osmotic diuresis, urine output is increased and there will be decrease in blood flow to kidney, and that will be also one of the factor which will be responsible for acidosis. Same thing shown here but little more detail, and this is a better slide. So from the food, amino acids, fatty acids, and plasma glucose. After digestion, all these three level will be increased: fat metabolism, carbohydrate metabolism, and protein metabolism. If there is a decreased level of insulin or no insulin release, then what is going to happen? We'll go one by one. Decreased fat storage. So fat will be broken down. Plasma fatty acids will be increased, and you will have substrate for ATP. Also from tissue, fat breakdown will be from tissue. So that will all will increase the level of fatty acids. Now liver will increase the ketone formation by utilizing this free fatty acid to manufacture gluconeogenesis, as well as decreased glucose utilization will increase the glycogenolysis in liver, and that both this factor will try to increase hyperglycemia, as well as from amino acids, that is protein breakdown from tissue, as well as from protein intake in the food, will all increase the plasma amino acid, which is also used as a substrate for ATP. So that will be also converted into gluconeogenesis, and this will lead to hyperglycemia. Because of decreased utilization of glucose, brain interprets as a starvation and person will have polyphagia. Now because of hyperglycemia, you will have excess of renal glucose threshold, so glycosuria, osmotic diuresis, polyuria, dehydration. Secondary to dehydration, increased thirst, polydipsia. Increased ADH secretion to compensate, blood volume will reduce, blood pressure will fall. And because of this, there will be an attempt to compensate from control center, but it will fail. And that will reduce your circulatory volume, and person will have hypotension, and finally person will go into coma and may die also. At the same time, these increased ketone levels will increase the H ions or will produce metabolic acidosis because of ketonemia, and that will stimulate the respiratory center to produce hyperventilation, and also urine will be acidic and person will also have hyperkalemia. Because of this hyperventilation, Kussmaul's breathing. Because of increased thirst, polyuria. Because of increased stimulation of the brain due to decreased glucose level, polyphagia. So all these factors will predispose to increase urine output, increase appetite, polyphagia, hyperventilation or we call Kussmaul's breathing, hyperapnea with tachypnea, two things together, and you will be able to detect acetone in urine as well as blood. Urine as well as blood. So this will be classical picture of diabetic ketoacidosis. And because of decreased anaerobic metabolism, you will have increased lactic acid production because of hypotension and shock. That will further add to metabolic acidosis apart from ketones. So decreased anabolism and increased catabolism. Increased catabolism will lead to diabetic ketoacidosis, and decreased anabolism will initially hyperglycemia, glycosuria, osmotic diuresis. Because of hyperglycemia, glucose is not producing adequate quantity of energy, so fatigue. Glycosuria will produce urinary tract infection and genital infections. Osmotic diuresis, polyuria and polydipsia. Decreased salt and water depletion will produce tachycardia, hypotension. So all these factors will be working together. And because of acidosis, hyperventilation, peripheral vasodilatation, and that will lead to hypotension and hypothermia. Because of gluconeogenesis, wasting of muscle and fat loss, so there will be loss of weight also. This is very characteristic, very common in type 1 diabetes mellitus. Same thing whatever we have mentioned before in previous slides, same thing is shown here. Decreased anabolism is put on this side and catabolism is put on this side. In this slide, catabolism was mentioned here, anabolism was mentioned on this side. So same thing shown here. So because of ketoacidosis, acidosis will produce loss of water, dehydration, ketonuria, vomiting, and impaired glucose entry into brain, and because of that alter level of consciousness. Hyperglycemia will produce glycosuria, osmotic diuresis, loss of electrolytes and dehydration. Intracellular potassium depletion, you will have hypotension, shock and tachycardia. And because of dehydration, you will have increased thirst. This will be all finding in case of diabetic ketoacidosis. But in a euglycemia, now just you will have to start from one side. Say because of starvation, reduce calorie intake, reduce insulin use. Because of starvation, hypoinsulinemia. Because of decreased insulin level, increase counter-regulatory hormones. And because of this increased counter-regulatory hormones, the person will not be able to utilize glucose. Now when SGLT2 inhibitor are given, there is increased urinary glucose loss, and that will lead to euglycemia. Now SGLT2 inhibitors will reduce also calorie intake and reduce insulin use. So this two factor is going to produce starvation, and this factor also inhibits lipolysis, free fatty acids and increases the ketone production. So person will develop metabolic ketoacidosis. So it will be ketone bodies which will be elevated in blood and it will produce acidosis. So it is ketoacidosis. So it will be metabolic ketoacidosis. And because of SGLT2, which is losing good amount of glucose in urine, the person will have nearly euglycemia. And because of counter-regulatory hormone, and particularly we call opposite of insulin, which hormone is required? Yes. So it is produced from, so counter-regulatory hormones, you have two, glucocorticoids, thyroid hormones, all we call is the stress hormones, as well as glucagon. So that all will be counter-regulatory hormones because of decreased glucose level, and secondary to that, now that glucagon will be responsible for ketones. So that will be the way the person will develop. So person who is on SGLT2 inhibitors, decreased sodium reabsorption, increased ketone body reabsorption. So these two factors will lead to ketone bodies in plasma, that is we call ketonemia, increased glycosuria. So there will be decrease in post glucose or plasma glucose, and simultaneously there is a decreased insulin dose which is being taken, and there is an increased glucagon formation. This glucagon is known to have ketogenesis. Decreased insulin dose will also predispose to increased action of glucagon. So that will also, this is a counter-regulatory hormone. So increased ketone formation as well as decreased insulin level will result into lipolysis, and these free fatty acids in liver will be converted into ketones for neoglucogenesis. So all this, so increased glucagon level and decreased insulin dose is responsible for increased lipolysis and increased ketogenesis, and finally it will end up with nearly normal glucose level, means less than 200, and increased ketone formation, increased ketonemia. That is what we call as euglycemic ketoacidosis. So SGLT2 will be working on kidney and will be working on pancreas. On pancreas, it will increase the glucagon level, which is a counter-regulatory hormone. In kidney, it will decrease the ketone clearance. So reabsorption of ketone will be more. So it will give rise to increased ketonemia, and by glycosuria, plasma glucose level will be lowered, and there will be high chance of ketoacidosis. And because of increased glucagon level, liver will be the site for manufacture of ketones. So this is very, very important. SGLT2 inhibitor acting on kidney, glycosuria, sodium loss, that is natriuresis, and increased ketone reabsorption, so ketonemia, and acting on a pancreas, decreases the glucose secretions or insulin production and increases the glucagon production. And because of this, lipolysis, free fatty acid formation, and increased ketone formation in liver. So ketogenesis, increased plasma ketone, reabsorb from kidney, all this will result into increased ketonemia and decreased glucose level. So we call euglycemic diabetic ketoacidosis. So we already shown you in previous. This is a very nice slide. So do remember SGLT2 working on kidney and working on pancreas. So that will be the factor responsible for more. So SGLT2 inhibitor can uncouple ketosis from expected finding of hyperglycemia in diabetic ketoacidosis. So that is the factor what is going to work. So during pregnancy, concomitant fasting, increased lipolysis, increased ketone formation, altered renal glucose threshold, glycosuria, and euglycemic diabetic ketoacidosis, as well as placental lactogens and cortisol contribute to insulin resistance. Clinical feature does not change anyway from classical diabetic ketoacidosis like nausea, vomiting, pain in abdomen, tachypnea, increased pulse, dry mouth, drowsy, flushed face, fruity smell, all this remains same. Two findings which will be little against: blood sugar level will be very close to normal, means usually in a euglycemic we come across blood sugar less than 200 and person has got decreased urine output in euglycemic. So polyuria is not there and decreased thirst. These two are the common findings which you will come across additionally in case of diabetic ketoacidosis. So by and large fruity smell, classical in case of diabetic ketoacidosis, polyuria, polydipsia, polyphagia, weight loss, fatigue, nausea, vomiting and dry mouth. While here decreased urination compared to diabetic ketoacidosis and decreased thirst. These two will be more common. So urine output, confusion, abdominal pain, tachypnea, hyperapnea, altered level of consciousness and dehydration will be quite common. So hyperglycemia will give rise to polyuria and polydipsia, weakness. Acidosis will give rise to air hunger in the form of hyperapnea and tachypnea, nausea, vomiting and abdominal pain and altered level of consciousness. And you will have a list of precipitating factors. That will be very, very common. So any person in whom you are suspecting diabetic ketoacidosis, pH will be less, bicarbonate will be less, anion gap will be more. In serum as well as urine, you will see ketone bodies and plasma glucose level will be more than 200. By and large, in classical diabetic ketoacidosis, it is almost more than 300. And there are good number of precipitating factors. So difference between hyperglycemic and euglycemic, I'll mention mainly of you. We have already mentioned regarding hyperglycemic. We'll be mentioning regarding euglycemic, that is blood sugar level will be less than 200. pH will be towards acidic, less than 7.3 and bicarbonate will be less than 18. Insulin deficiency and increased counter-regulatory hormone causing hyperglycemia and starvation from any cause of euglycemia. As a result of decreased circulating glucose level in starvation, cirrhosis, external use of insulin, SGLT2 inhibitor, pancreatitis, depression, etc. will be the precipitating factor. And particularly if this person who is on insulin and insulin dose doesn't go properly, the chance of ketoacidosis will be higher. So you must be aware of it. So always remember, good number of conditions are predisposing to diabetic ketoacidosis, particularly during pregnancy and person who is on SGLT2 inhibitor. Also, you will have a good number of person because of condition that increases bicarbonate. Example, loss of bicarbonate by vomiting. So you will have mixed acid base. So pH is not so low. You must remember this, that if the person is losing vomiting, good amount of vomiting, H ions will be lost. So bicarbonate level will be elevated. This will be one factor you must be aware of. During pregnancy, normal or mild increase in glucose level, you should be aware of that. Euglycemic diabetic ketoacidosis can occur together in this if person is on SGLT2 inhibitor. Osmotic diuresis, loss of ketones and anion gap may be narrow. And you are aware of it. Increased beta hydroxybutyrate will produce negative serum ketones. So you must order serum beta hydroxybutyrate level to find out ketoacidosis. So serum ketones is more important, and again in serum ketones, beta hydroxybutyrate to confirm the diagnosis of diabetic ketoacidosis. So glucose level will be high in DKA, will be normal, or will usually be less than 200. pH will be much more lower in case of a euglycemic ketoacidosis as compared to in diabetic ketoacidosis. Bicarbonate level will be much more lower, means you will have a very high anion gap, and potassium will be close to normal or slightly elevated in case of DKA. Also, in case of SGLT2 inhibitor use with euglycemic ketoacidosis, potassium may be low or may be normal or may be slightly elevated. So this will be most important is glucose level will be high in DKA, it will be close to normal or less than 200 is much more important than other, and very high anion gap. We call high anion gap. So this will be diabetic ketoacidosis and euglycemic ketoacidosis. You can see here, this will be more than 200, this is less than 200. Ketones will be there in both, anion gap will be there, but this will be with high anion gap, very high anion gap. I'll skip this slide. You can go through your at leisure time. This is the difference between DKA and hyperosmolar non-ketotic coma. So test required: one, you have to confirm the diagnosis of ketoacidosis by means of presence of ketones in blood or in urine. So ketones in blood you can measure, and that we call as a ketonemia. You have got rapid method available which you can do. In urine you can use a strip. Also you can measure ketones in blood by special instruments. Ask for chest x-ray if you are suspecting respiratory infection. Urine culture and urine examination to rule out UTI. Culture of sputum and blood can be done. Look for venous blood gas, very easy. If you don't get the arterial blood gas, instead of ABG you can go for venous blood gas. And also look for plasma osmolality and look for anion gap. If there is a very big anion gap, more than 20, and person has got ketonemia, it will be more in favor of euglycemic diabetic ketoacidosis. And don't forget to look for sodium potassium imbalance. That is very important. And try to identify the precipitating cause. Primary treatment is replace insulin, replace fluid, correct electrolyte imbalance, particularly potassium and sodium. Treat the basic cause. If there is any precipitating cause like respiratory infection or urinary tract infection, and simultaneously supportive treatment whatever may be the complications. So prevent complications. So management of precipitating factor like gastroenteritis, UTI and respiratory tract infection. Identify is any one of these as a precipitating factor. Other precipitating factor common are myocardial ischemia and stroke. Stop SGLT2 inhibitor and also cocaine use should be stopped. Determine the underlying cause and try to correct. First is fluid replacement. Along with that you should correct potassium, and while you are correcting potassium keep a watch on magnesium also. Treat hyperglycemia by using regular insulin by IV, and as soon as the blood sugar comes back to normal, ketoacidosis reduces, anion gap is corrected, you can switch over to regular subcutaneous or insulin pump. So intravenous fluid, insulin and potassium correction is a must in all patients with euglycemic diabetic ketoacidosis or even diabetic ketoacidosis. So insulin is required here, IV fluid is required because there is a loss of fluid, and you try to correct by giving IV fluids with dextrose and insulin. So insulin should be used, usually they require very lower dose of insulin. IV fluid is needed and may require potassium depending upon the potassium level. And stop using SGLT2 inhibitor. Don't use nitroprusside because they will interfere in your management. As far as complication is concerned, high anion gap metabolic acidosis, hypokalemia, ARDS, cerebral edema is quite common. Do keep a watch. So in summary, off-label use of type 2 diabetes medication is common in type 1. Detailed medical history should be obtained and try to see that person is not on SGLT2 inhibitors. Euglycemic ketoacidosis must be suspected in any patient presenting with symptom signs of decay or metabolic acidosis and there is a ketonuria and blood sugars are normal. So do keep it in mind. Treatment of euglycemic ketoacidosis consists of fluid replacement and insulin with glucose or with dextrose. So I end my lecture here. Once in a while you will come across this particular condition and you must keep a watch on a person in whom you have started SGLT2 inhibitor and person is either type 2 or you have put SGLT2 inhibitor in type 1 diabetes mellitus. There is a very high chance of euglycemic decay. But in type 2 diabetes mellitus, if person develops concomitant infection and if he is on SGLT2 inhibitor, he develops an infection, respiratory, urinary tract or say gastroenteritis, etc. Or he skips the dose of insulin if he is on insulin, then chance of euglycemic ketoacidosis will be very high. So this is one odd condition where treatment will be little different from diabetic ketoacidosis. So do keep this particular in your mind. So I end my lecture here. If you like this particular lecture, please press button like. You can subscribe, and if you feel this is important to your friends also, you can share with your friends. At the end, thank you for taking out time. I know that your time is valuable and I appreciate you for spending some of the time with me. See you in next lecture.